Old school rounds, Magtech 38 special versus 9mm, and these two rounds kind of are an example of how ammo used to be loaded, where you needed a certain type of bullet design with the 38 special, and with the 9mm you needed a certain kind of weight for it to work. So what we have here is our 38 special. It is a 158 grain semi-jacketed hollow point. It is a standard pressure 38 special, and that's a very unique load because currently you can't find a 38 special and a 158 grain that is a semi-jacketed hollow point. They're all pretty much a 110 or 125 grain, and in those most of them are actually plus P variants. So this is an old school round. It's rated at 807 feet per second through a 4-inch V barrel, test barrel. And you know, that's an odd rating. I believe it's just because this is foreign ammo and they go by meters per second and then it's converted over. So 807 feet per second is our rating through a 4-inch barrel. And our 9mm, it is a 115 grain jacketed hollow point, rated at 1155 feet per second through a 4-inch barrel. So with our 38 special, I'm going to test it through my 4-inch barrel Smith & Wesson 686 and my 2-inch barrel Taurus 605. And with our 9mm, I'm going to test that through our 5-inch barrel M&P 2.0 and our 3.2-inch barrel Taurus G2C. And you know, pretty much going to be a comparison between these two and then these two. And a lot of people say, well, that's 2-inch and that's 3.2-inch, that ain't fair. But it's actually the same size overall barrel travel. When you look at the size of the guns, that's how it works, because measurements of semi-auto pistols are including the chamber. The barrel measurement on a revolver does not. And we have the same similar thing going on with our 4-inch revolver versus a 5-inch pistol. So this should be a really interesting test. So I am going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy I get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. And in this part of this test here, I'm just going to go into plain clear ballistics. That's it, to see what our best potential is of those cartridges, because sometimes that's how they're designed to work, is through plain clear ballistics. And I also like to include that test because if you have other YouTubers that do the test, you can kind of go on their channels and see what my results are compared to theirs, because a lot of people do just plain gel testing. But then I also like to do my real world test, where we put on 3 inches of clear ballistics that represents our pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard that represents our ribs and sternum. On in front of that, we have 4 layers of cotton sweatshirt. That'll be more of our real world simulation, and we'll see how those cartridges do in more of our real world simulation. And then I am going to shoot at my steel silhouette to see what kind of practical accuracy I can get with these rounds, because if I can't hit anything, no rounds are good if I'm not accurate with them. So let's get started with this test. All right, so I'm going to get our reads with our 9mm 115 grain, rated at 1155 feet per second through a 4-inch barrel. Let's see what we get, how close we get to that through this 5-inch barrel pistol here. So rated at 1155, let's see what we get. 1209, 1195, 1214. No read, I pulled that one. 1202, 1196. So like you might expect, a little bit higher than rated velocity. So 3.2-inch barrel, we're shorter than that 4-inch test barrel. Let's see how close we get to 1155 in this. 1135, 1122, 1080, 1139, 1114. So one that was kind of low, but pretty much what you'd expect with a drop in barrel like that. So let's see what our 38 special does here. Our 38 special is rated at 807 feet per second through a 4-inch test barrel. With our 4-inch Smith & Wesson model 686, see how close we get to that 807 feet per second. 845, 847, 844, 794, 852. Except for one round, we were above rated velocity, very consistent, but that one round just was kind of low. Now 2-inch barrel, let's see how close we get to that 807 feet per second in our 2-inch barrel here. 766, 785, 772, 776, 780. So relatively consistent in this, and a lot more flash with our 2-inch barrel. So we can tell just from that test that, you know, the type of powder used is optimized for a 4-inch barrel. A little bit slower burning powder. But still, we had decent overall consistency and velocity in this. So let's hit our ballistics gel block with these and see how they all compare. All right, we're gonna do our plain gel shot, best potential with both of these. So here's our 9mm 5-inch barrel. Let's see what this gives us. All right. Let's hit that with our 38 special and our 4-inch barrel. See how this compares. Let's go take a look. All right, so I saw some smoke coming out there, and the reason for that is because, you know, it went through here and it's pushing some air. It's kind of dieseling a little bit. So we're seeing a significant difference here with both of these. With our 9mm, we have very good expansion, but we only have a penetration of about 10.5 inches. With our 38 special, I didn't really expect to see expansion, but I didn't think I was going to get that much straight line penetration. We're all the way up here at about 28 3/4. So yeah, that's quite a bit of penetration there. So neither of these did really well. Our 9mm did better if it was a front-on shot. Our 38 special would have done better if it was a side shot and it needed to go through more material. So let's try our short barrels before we draw any real conclusions and see how those do. All right, our short barrel. There's our short barrel with our 9mm. We might actually reduce that expansion, and it might be a pretty good performer. So let's see how our 9mm does in our short barrel. All right, 38 special short barrel. Go take a look. All right, so that's pretty much what I thought was going to happen. I was thinking we'd probably get a little bit better performance with our 9mm, because if it's not hitting so fast, it's going to, you know, control that expansion a little bit better. So we have a very ideal penetration of about 14.5 inches with that 9mm. So at least in our plain gel testing, we can say that the 9mm did quite well here. Now with our 38 special, that did the same thing, but we got less penetration simply because we had less velocity. You know, we're not really getting much nose deformation, so a little less velocity is only just going to push it deeper. So this isn't too bad. About 24 inches. It's definitely over penetration. If you're going to compare that to like real organic gel, it'd probably be more like 21 inches or something like that. A little bit over penetration, but not significantly. So I would say with our longer barrels, it's hard to say what would do better. I'm going to say the 9mm would still probably be more effective, even though it didn't penetrate very well. And same thing with our short barrel. Looks like our 9mm would have done better. So let's put on our fabric, our MDF in here, a new block, and see how they compare that way. All right, for more of our real world simulation, we have fabric like clothing, 4 layers of cotton sweatshirt, 3 inches of clear ballistics to be like our pectoral muscle. Clear ballistics is roughly half as dense as real flesh, so 3 inches of that is like 1.5 inches of human flesh. 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent our ribs. So let's see how our 9mm does in more of our real world simulation. All right, let me hit that with the 38 special. Go take a look. All right, so we're doing kind of the same thing, except what we're seeing here is now when we go into the real world, we're bone can actually affect that soft tip of that 38 special, it changes everything. So we have a little more damage in one spot with our 9mm, but if you actually add up the whole track of the 38, it's pretty similar amount of damage. What we got here with our 9mm is we got 11.5 inches, a little bit shallow still. Now with our 38 special and more of our real world simulation, that turned it into something a little bit more ideal of about 17 inches. That's a very ideal penetration and good damage. So you can see how more of a real world simulation can show things a little bit differently than what they are. You know, when people designed these bullets years ago with those semi-jacketed tips, they were designing them because of bones. They knew how they would perform against them. So let's try our short barrels now and see how they compare that way. All right, short barrels. Let's try our 9mm. All right, let me hit that with our 38 special now. Let's take a look. All right, so we have identical penetration with both of those. Interesting. More damage with our 9mm for sure. And I'm going to say our 9mm is very ideal performing here. I am curious about what we got here with our MDF. So let me pull this out. Pull this piece off here. So here's our 9mm with our 5-inch barrel and our 9mm with our 3.2. 38, 4-inch, 2-inch. So we can see that that's a little bit fast all around with that 9mm. That's doing more controlled expansion. It's expanding after it goes to this. And with our 38, it's more controlled all around, just a little more velocity, hitting a little bit bigger here with our 4-inch. So that can tell us something about this. So what we're seeing here with our short barrels is our 9mm went to 19 inches. Good expansion. Looks like really good looking bullet overall. And 19 inches in clear ballistics is not over penetration at all. Did really well. More damage. Our 38 special, like I said, that's the same. We have the same penetration of 19 inches. There's some nose deformation. So in the real world, you know, even though I know some people are gonna say, well, that's not the real world, that's just a simulation. Yes, but in my real world simulation, energy isn't everything, and when you put that variables in there of that bone and that fabric, things kind of equal out, and that's kind of how these are meant to perform, and I would say both are doing pretty well. So if I had to carry either of these in a short barrel or a long barrel, I would say that in a long barrel, our 38 and our both our 38s would do, or the 38 would do good in both barrel lengths. With the 9mm, I'm gonna say you probably are better off with that as being a short barrel load, because it did perform better in the short barrel. So interesting results. So let me shoot at my steel and see what kind of practical accuracy I can get with these. All right, so here's our plain gel shots here, and here's our 9mm and our 38 special, and we can see with our plain gel, it's obvious why we got so much penetration with our 38 specials. It's also obvious why we got so little with our 5-inch barrel with our 9mm. Just massive expansion with our 5-inch barrel. With our 3.2-inch here, the expansion wasn't so big, so it could penetrate adequately. Now with our 38 specials, we basically got no expansion other than a little bit of mushrooming here, our 4-inch barrel and our 2-inch barrel. So that's what we get with our plain gel shots. But when we go into more of a real world simulation, this is where things really change. Here is our 5-inch barrel through our MDF, and that's still underpenetrated a little bit. And we actually look at our 4-inch barrel here with our 38 special. That didn't expand as much, and that penetrated adequately. So between our 4-inch barrel 38 and our 5-inch 9mm, our 38 pretty much did better. Now when we go to our shorter barrels here, There's our 3.2 inch through our MDF with our 9mm. That was pretty ideal. We didn't get over expansion, so we got good penetration, decent expansion. With our 2-inch barrel here, we have very mild expansion here, and loss of power. So overall it did good, but not quite as good as the 9mm through our short barrel here. So that's a look at those bullets, and we can see how, you know, real world here versus plain gel makes a big difference here, because here's our real world 38s versus our plain gel ones. Big difference. With our 9mm, it's a little more consistent, but our plain gel ones definitely look all perfect and pretty. But our more real world ones here, you know, they still perform pretty well. So it's cool to kind of look at those up close. All right, I'm going to do some various distances. Here's our 9mm at 25 yards with our 5-inch barrel. They'll shoot perfectly point of aim. 38 special on our 4-inch. Alright, that could just be me pulling it. See how our 9mm does. 25 yards. Alright. 38 special, our snub. I don't know where that first round went. That was interesting. Let me back it up a little bit. All right, I got all these guns and all these speed loaders and all these magazines on me. I'm trying to keep them situated. I'm just gonna come back to 75 yards because that's what I like doing. I really enjoy it, even if it's not practical. And see what I can do with these. So 9mm with our 5-inch barrel. This seemed like it shot really point of aim perfectly at 25 yards. So let's see what we do here, what we can do with this at 75 yards. All right, I pulled one. You can see how accurate that round really is. For a cheap round, that's pretty impressive. It's like a lot of the impacts are just a little bit to the right for me. Let's try our 3.2-inch barrel here. Not sure if these will hit point aim, but looked like even with the 5-inch, they were dropping a little bit low. And I can't tell really where I'm hitting with that. I'm not exactly sure. I got a full mag here, so let's find out. Alright, so like I first thought, they were going a little bit consistently low. But at the same time, I saw a lot of stuff shifting around. Wasn't really sure where they were hitting. 38 special here. A lot slower shooting. Let's see what this does with our 4-inch barrel. Alright, so these are shooting so slow, I believe they're jumping very high. I think I may have to aim below the target. No hits. I don't know what happened there. we'll keep going here. I try to keep an eye on where these are going. All right, so I can't tell exactly where my impacts are, but I did have to aim at the very bottom of the target. Like if this is me, like right here. So that's where those were impacting. So, snub nose. I'm not sure what to expect with this. I probably have to aim about the same place. Oh, that one hit low. Whoops. I was gonna reload two more. I went backwards on that, thinking after two I was empty. So let me pick up those rounds and I'll keep going. All right, 5 rounds left of our 38 for our snub. So I believe I just have to basically aim center mass with this round. All right, so not super consistent with that. So overall, one thing that I'm looking at this ammo and I'm getting the takeaway from is that 9mm is really impressive. I'm impressed with it overall. Now with our 5-inch barrel, which most people are not going to be carrying, it was too fast. That sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it was too fast because we just got too much expansion. But it's very accurate in the 5-inch barrel. If you made a straight on shot with that, there'd be plenty of penetration. And it'd kind of be easier to make a straight on shot with something like a 5-inch barrel. Now overall with our 3.2-inch barrel, it did a lot better ballistically. We had just the right amount of velocity, you know, somewhere in the mid 1100s or low 1100s. It was perfect for that 115 grain to get good penetration and good expansion, do a lot of damage. So overall, for being a cheap 9mm, I don't even remember what I paid for this, but I think it was something like $30 for a 50-round box, which for the average retailer, that's pretty low. You can find like Gold Dot and HST out there for about that price if you look around enough. But most people can't find stuff like that cheap, and they're on regular websites or regular retailers and stuff like that. Those 50-round boxes, the HST, for them, well, they can't even find it. Generally it's the 20-round boxes, and they're paying about 30 bucks. So 50 rounds of this for 30 bucks is a pretty good deal. Now with the 38 Special, this is one of those things where you can't call ballistic testing right away and be like, yep, that sucks, because of some of the testing protocols people do. What I can say is, you know, if you go into plain jelly, it looks like it's a complete failure, it looks like it's terrible. But human beings aren't just jelly. We're a little bit more dense, and we're full of ribs and sternum and all kinds of stuff. So when you put that in the way and that soft tip hits that, everything shifts around. And we can see that overall in our real world testing, 38 Special did pretty good. So overall, I'm going to say the 9mm is really surprising. I thought it was going to fail completely, not expand, because the hollow point looked kind of questionable. 100% reliable in both of these pistols, did very well. Our 38 Special, not quite as surprising and as good, but still pretty good. And if you had to carry a standard pressure 38 Special, I'm going to say this isn't bad. This really isn't bad, because there's not a lot of options, and I would say that's a pretty good choice. Because what's interesting about this is, you know, you can find semi-jacketed hollow points in 38 and 38 plus P, but they're only 110 and 125 grain. With our 158 grain, you know, there's enough lead there that it mushroomed, but at the same time, that momentum really caused it to penetrate better than a lot of cartridges out there nowadays. The sectional density is really high. So in a lot of applications, I'm gonna say that would probably do pretty well. And surprisingly, I think it would even do well like a bear charged. You'd probably do better than a 9mm, surprisingly. So that's what you get today with that. Interesting results. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.